Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome to Expanding the Conversation with Richard and Kofi. Today, we are having part two of our discussion from last Tuesday, emotions, passion, and commitment. I think in the last conversation, we talked a little bit about how you deal with commitment and sort of what is the purpose of emotions and passion, and how we're driven by those things. But there are times when emotions don't necessarily drive you in the direction you want to go. And we identified a number of scenarios where that is true. And then during those times, it's your commitment that really matters. And so the question is, what's the right balance there, and what's the right function and use of emotions? Because we can't, as they always say, can't let your emotions get the best of you in many different scenarios, right? So and we talk about commitment to a particular path, commitment to certain values and certain principles, but even that can get very difficult at times and very boring. And so this balance where you feel something and you do what you feel makes it easy, especially if you're doing, let's say, the right thing and you want to do the right thing. But then there are times where you feel obligated, and commitment can make you feel obligated, but you don't feel like you want to do it. And so, how do you balance those things? And I think we had some really good feedback and comments on the live that we did. One of our good friends and former teacher from back in the day, Felicia, made some really insightful comments, and Richard will pull them up, and I think that's going to form the basis for our expanding session today, talking about some of the things that she brought up. So yeah, Rich, what did Felicia say?
Yeah, so the first point that she had there, and I put it up on the screen to maybe help the conversation along, is we can't let emotions rule us, but they are important. So, therefore, what are emotions? What is their role in our lives, and how does one manage them? And there's another question I think that we can probably move on to after we've answered this lengthy one here, because I don't know that there's an easy answer.
Right,
Emotions probably mean very different things to very different
different
people.
people. Right.
And so, and maybe I guess one of the things that we try to dig into in the last conversation is how sometimes we mix up things like passion, right? And then what we feel passionate about, and what is our passion, how do we find our passion, and that kind of thing, and how we mix that up with how we feel, right? If we don't feel like we're passionate about the work that we do, we just resign and go try to find another job that we're passionate
I think that was the second part, the second question, right?
Yes, but I think emotions are wrapped up in that, right? So I guess for me, I'll give my take on this, and then you can jump in. But I think emotions are important, and they're important for me in that I have to feel like I want to do, and I'm connected to what I'm doing, and it's serving a purpose, and I feel good whilst I'm doing it, right? So, emotions, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in your head, and sometimes is in no way connected to your external reality, but it does drive how you feel and how engaged you are in what you're doing. And so I think emotions is just a feeling, right? It's just the way you feel about something that you're doing, and and therefore it does affect how well you do what you do. And so the role of it in our lives, I think it helps bring some energy to what we do, right? It brings a little bit of excitement to the work that we're doing if we're emotionally engaged in it and we feel some sort of emotional connection to it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we see this, right, where people just feel like they don't love what they do, they're not connected to it in any way, and so therefore they're just less emotionally engaged. And so I think when you're less emotionally engaged, you're less alert, you pay less attention. I'm just gonna get this done as fast
Right.
as I can, and that's what I think emotions are. I mean, I'm more than happy to have you jump in.
Yeah, I would take, so. For me, objectively, if I could make it an objective statement, to define emotions, right? It's sort of emotions are a response to some stimulus that we feel, right? So if and these are chemical triggers. So I was going to say straight up, this is what's happening in our body, right? There are certain
Good scientific
chemicals,
explanation.
dopamine, and the whole line of hormones and and biochemicals that tend to trigger certain feelings, right? Of euphoria, happy, sad, and different things like that. And so we are, in essence, responding to our environment. And a major aspect of emotions to me is perspective, because two individuals can look at the exact same thing and one can feel happy and one can feel sad, right? And so it tells us that emotions are very personal, and they really depend on perspective. As I tell people, I grew up in as a child getting my butt whooped by my parents when I misbehave, right? And it, to me, it's made me a much better person. I don't beat my kids, however, because I don't think that it's going to be seen that way, and they're going to have very different emotions, in response to sort of the way I grew up. And to use that as an experience, people feel differently about the exact same thing, and it generates different emotions. Here's what's also interesting, right, Rich, is that you could have an experience 5, 10 in the past, some many years ago, and it was traumatic or very sad. And then in the future, your perspective may change, and you could look back at that same event and generate a different set of emotions from it. So to me, emotions are sort of a psychological or biochemical trigger that produces things in our body to make us feel a certain way. Fear, for example, if I feel like something bad's going to happen, my body's going to release hormones that make me feel fearful because it wants me to do something, right? We're well aware of the fight and flight sort of response. And these things are part of who we are. And I think recognizing that, right, that these are natural things. If you feel sad, that it's okay. It's normal to feel sad. It's natural to feel sad. It's natural to feel disconnected from things at times. It's natural to feel happy. I think the issue that we need to think about, like we've been talking about, is when these things continue, where you're constantly sad or you're constantly disconnected. Because all of us, even the things we love, even our passion, sometimes we feel down on a short-term basis, kind of going up and down. But I think what's really important here is if we understand the basis of emotions, then we also begin to realize that we can play a role in how we feel as well, depending on our own circumstances and how we view the world and how we think about our own circumstances. So emotions are malleable. They're things that can be changed depending on the work that we do on ourselves, the way we view the world, right? And sort of where we find ourselves at different times in the world. And so I think you have to understand emotions within within that context to be able to sort of understand the role that they're playing, right? They play a protective role. Sometimes you're like, I don't think I want to do this. You feel scared. But sometimes when you feel happy, you shouldn't do things either. Think about what's driving that, right? Because that could be addictive behavior, right? Where you get that feedback all the time, that dopamine feedback, and you keep looking for more. And that's kind of how it is designed. That if it feels good, do more. If it doesn't feel good, do less of it. But we know that doesn't lead to the kinds of outcomes that we're looking for. And that's where I think that we have to make a really strong effort, as they say, to exercise self-control, and which is, regardless of how I feel, I have to make a commitment and a decision based on, say logic in this case, right, or faith, depending on who you are, to go in a different direction, and to sort of betray my emotions on a particular thing, right? But you have to be aware of what's driving and creating that sort of emotion. So that's what I think.
So you're saying I shouldn't elope and get married?
I am saying if you want to elope and get married, it depends on the circumstances.
No, I mean, I guess you touched a little bit on there. The last part of that question there, that Felicia posed, right? How does one manage them, right? And I think maybe a little bit of that is thinking about your emotions when they happen, because I think the beauty about life is that as human beings, and I've had moments like these where I could witness myself sort of having an emotional response, right? So if I'm tired at the end of the day and I'm grumpy and
Right.
something triggers me, or I'm doing something with the kids, or I just feel like I know this is not what I want to do. I just feel like this is not how I want to respond. So I'm aware of my emotions. I'm observing myself, and I think so maybe just an observation. I think of the emotions that you go through in any given point in time throughout the day. Whether you want to observe that over whatever time period. I think, and as you said, think about them. Right? Are some of them sort of past trauma that we're living through, just emotional responses, and then
Right.
that happen a lot. Even the things that you say to people sometimes can be impacted by some trauma that you've had in your life before. I'm sure people are aware of these in relationships, because I think that's when they probably come out the most. And so I think to manage your emotions, that you've got to sort of take note, right, when you're having emotional responses, even happy moments, because I think if you understand what sort of makes you happy, what gets you excited, what gets you engaged, and I think you can as you said, right, you can create those. And I use a basic example. When I wake up in the morning, if I want to hype myself up, I've got to start doing some jumping jacks, and I feel like, okay, I'm psyched, but also I've got to do some reflection on what I'm trying to create in my life for the day, and maybe give some gratitude to some things that I have, and I can create a certain type of emotion that can last me throughout the day.
Right.
So that's what I would say around just managing your emotion. I think there are probably lots of different tools that you can use out there, but that's
Yeah.
very basic level for me.
Yeah. I'm not. We're not. I mean, I can only speak on what the things I do. Right. I'm not a
That's right.
a
This is not
psychologist.
expert advice.
Yeah. Yeah. This is not. This is disclaimer. This is not like expert advice. If you have challenge managing your emotions, go talk to somebody who is an expert in this area. But if I could share my own personal experience, as I said, um, sometimes if you feel overwhelmed, right? Someone who, like in my case, who tends to do a lot, when you feel overwhelmed, I think it's always helpful to stop, right, and relax, and then just really think about what's important, and focus on that, or do nothing. Usually, I find the best way to deal with feeling overwhelmed is to step back and take a break. All right, and it's okay to take a break, and sometimes we got to feel like it's okay to take a break. Um, the other thing is, if I feel down, I'm working on a life's goal or an activity or a project, and there comes a time when the passion just goes away. You don't feel like you want to continue. I think that's another time when you stop and remind yourself of what you were trying to achieve in the first place. And Rich, I know we work together on our alumni association, and there was something that you introduced there, which was at the beginning of all those meetings, we recite the mission and vision of the organization. And that's really, really helpful because, yeah, if you think of that in your own life, right, if you've got a mission and a vision, and you feel like you're not, you're dealing with
Not
some
to interrupt
challenges.
you, but if you don't have a mission and a vision, you need to have a mission and a
You
vision.
need to have that. There you go, right? But once you have that mission and vision for your life, and you put it up on the wall, right? We have one for our family up on the wall. And what you do is you remind yourself that that's what I want to be. That's who I want to be. Those are the attitudes I want to cultivate, and you take yourself back to that place, and allow that place, allow those vision, the mission, why you were doing it in the first place, help you to sort of get through that difficult time. And I think a lot of times when we remind ourselves of sort of what the mission is and what the vision is, it can re-energize us. It can really serve as a source for energy and excitement, again, about why we were doing something in the first place. those are some of the things that I find. Gratitude is also another great way to help manage emotions, right? If we feel like you don't have enough, or we feel like maybe nobody loves us, or whatever it is, if you stop and just for a moment focus on the things you already have and the people you have in your lives, it can really shift the way you feel. From, let's say, if I may describe an emotion as negative, to something really positive, right? The other thing I would say is sometimes when we experience an emotion, we have to let ourselves go through it. Sometimes you can go around it, sometimes you can go above it, maybe under it, but there's sometimes they say you got to go through it. And one of the things I was thinking about is, people who deal with like grieving, losing somebody, or somebody going through a sickness. Sometimes you want to block that out because you don't want to allow yourself to feel that sense of sadness and difficulty. But I think having experienced that, even in my own life, I find that it's helpful to allow yourself to experience those emotions, because it's kind of a process, right, to make your way through it. And so those are just some of the ways I've dealt with my own. I'm not perfect in any way, but those are some of the ways I'm trying to deal with the range of emotions that I experience every day.
So that's a lot there. The other point that and question that which I had there was along the lines of passion, because I know the last time we connected, sort of
Yeah.
passions in discussion. That she was asking, passion is built and recognized over time. How do we recognize our passions? What role do other people have in us recognizing what we're passionate about? What is being passionate? I think there's a little bit more there. What is passion? What is being passionate of? Sorry, yeah, I think I might have watched.
What role she says, how do we recognize our passions? What role do other people have in us recognizing what we are passionate about? And what does being passionate about something, do we leave other piece, maybe what it means?
Yeah, she says, what does maybe that thing was too long for or banner there. What does being passionate about something add to our lives, and is life not being fully lived if we have no passion? So lots of pieces,
Yeah.
pieces there. Maybe we could touch on a little bit of it, and obviously I think we need to continue to expand this conversation because
It's all passion needs to be defined here though, right, Rich? Because a lot of times excitement and passion go hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
People, in terms of how people see it, like if you aren't excited, then you aren't passionate, right? But some people are loud and excited all the time, and some people have quiet passion, right? They don't run around and jump. You don't see them screaming out things, but inside they're just filled with passion, right? When they dedicate themselves to get things done, and it's like a feeling on the inside, but you don't often see it on the outside. There are some people who they say, Bono, you speak passionately. I love your passion. I can hear it in your voice, right? I feel like sometimes people ooze passion. You see it, and some people are good at expressing passion, and some people just aren't. But they're really passionate about stuff. They just aren't expressive, And I think that's okay. So I think that the first thing you have to do is don't confuse passion with excitement and the expression, like outward expression of excitement. I don't know that those are synonymous with each other.
So I guess in this context, I would think maybe it's more along the lines of a pursuit, right? As a passionate, something that we pursue in life with a high, I guess, a highly charged emotional state, maybe, or just something that we wake up excited about every day. I certainly think maybe the definition can vary by person. The basic definition, if I do a Google search, it says strong and barely controllable emotions. So
I don't know that I necessarily agree with Google. I think there is such a thing as quiet passion. People who are reserved, and they don't wear their emotions, as we say, on their sleeves, but they're very passionate about what they do. And I think that passion in this case, because what we've been talking about here, right, is this balance between commitment and emotions. So I think what I'm saying is passion is somewhere on this spectrum. Being all excited on the emotional spectrum doesn't necessarily mean passion, right? That means excited. I get it. You're excited about something. But what happens is if you don't have the commitment, right, to stay the course on something that you're showing a lot of excitement about, can I truly call that passion? I mean, right? Can I truly call it? If you don't follow through, then I don't know. For me, the passion's got to be a balance, a really good mix between something I'm excited about and something I'm willing to commit to, right? It's not just getting excited. That's easily done. To me, it's more like a coal pot, right? After the flame burns off, the fine stick burns off. That blazing, that red coal that just burns quietly the entire time, as opposed to like the gasoline poof, right? That initial excitement that just goes away. I think a big part of passion is commitment.
I would agree with that, and I'd probably say passion is the thing you pursue regardless of your emotional state, right? It's
Right.
something that you put in work towards, whether you're feeling happy or sad, because you feel committed enough to it, and so therefore you're willing to work on it um, regardless of how you feel, right? If
Right.
you're happy or you're sad, you recognize, like an example, I guess, of that for me would be just my kids, right? And so I feel like as a parent, I'm passionate about being a parent. So if I wake up and I don't feel so great, I'm still going to be the parent I need to be, right? I'm still going to do as much as I can for my kids in their life because I feel like that's something that I'm passionate about. Of course, if I'm happy, I'll do it as well. So maybe that's a good narrowing down. A passion is something that you pursue regardless of your emotional state, whether you're having a high or a low.
Yeah.
Um, and,
Let me
and,
just
and
go on.
no, but I guess the other part of the question, um, maybe we could just stop at that second part there as to what role do other people have in us recognizing what we're passionate about. And I would say I would say it's zero because I think finding things that you're passionate about and that you want to pursue um, is almost entirely up to you, right? You could pursue very many things in life. I've been an accountant all my life, but I don't necessarily know. I would say it's my passion, but I guess based on the amount of time and effort and energy I put into it and the growth I've had,
But let
maybe
me
it is right. So, but I still think we've got to make those decisions on our own. I think you could certainly have mentors and people that come along to give you advice, and maybe I guess observe from externally, give you some feedback as to things that you're good at, maybe that you're not aware of. But I feel like in my case, I would say that role is mostly on you, but I think it could vary.
I think like purpose, passion has to be rightly defined. Quite often we tend to define our purpose and our passion based on career goals and things like that. And I don't really think that that's being fair to ourselves. Like your example of being an accountant, I might be passionate about raising a family, and having an accounting job is exactly the thing I need to make sure that I'm providing for my kids, right? And that's where my passion is. My passion is over there taking care of those kids, and I need to do what I need to do to make sure that they're fine. But more than that, though, I think you can define passion more broadly, just like purpose, and simplify it, right? Not think about it as just a career. For example, I like to think of myself as a problem solver. I like to think of myself as, an innovator. And it doesn't matter to me what the environment is and what the job is, where I am. I'm always looking, right, for an opportunity to serve, solve problems, make people's lives better. I think if you define your purpose and your passion in that way, I really like to make people laugh. For example, I really like to make people happy. When I walk away from conversations with people, I want them to feel better about themselves than when they first spoke to me. Those are simple things that we can commit to that don't require, jobs and all of that stuff, right? And so when we find ourselves in certain circles, we can commit to that. It's a small enough commitment. We're passionate about it, and it defines the purpose of our lives. And it becomes real easy to achieve. And I think if we can define things in that way, Rich, it doesn't matter whether you're an accountant or a scientist or a president, right? It doesn't really matter. The thing is, the fundamental principles and values that we have committed to can cut across all of those lines, including religion, as well as culture and career, right? And so when you show up to a place, right, you show up with that very fundamental nature of your passion, and you bring that to every job you go on, right? And I'm sure if you weren't an accountant and doing something else, you would bring the same drive, right? You would try to impact lives in the same way, because that's, to me, is what passion is, and that to me is what purpose is. It's the thing that is not your career that really gets you going. But your career sometimes gives you an opportunity to achieve that purpose. Don't confuse your career and your purpose. Don't confuse your career and your passion, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The other thing, I guess, in all that in that explanation there, which I have observed to be true, is that your passion and your purpose often, while it may bring you great satisfaction about who you are and your role that you play in the world that we live in, it often has an external impact, right? It's gonna impact somebody else other than yourself,
Yeah.
in a major way. So I think it's helpful as you think about that, that you recognize that it's got an element of external impact to it, and I would definitely agree with that. So yeah, I think we've covered a good bit there. We might have to circle back to address some of the other questions, but in the interest of time and not making these talks too long, because we know people don't generally like to look at too many long videos, we will end there. But I think it's a good conversation, and a lot of this I find is helpful to think through as we're navigating our lives, and for some of us navigating, I would say, the second half of our lives, and thinking about what we've spent our time on, where we're heading, and how does that sort of connect to everything else that we want out of life. I think it's a helpful discussion, and we probably could certainly use some expert advice, but especially on managing of emotions, because I'm sure that's one of those things we could all use some help with.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I think probably a good stopping point. Thanks everybody for listening in. Feel free to share your comments. We do appreciate when people get involved, because it's nice to know that we can discuss something that's on your mind, but at the same time that it's adding some value. So please feel free to drop your comments down there, and let's continue to expand the conversation.
All right. Take care, guys.
Bye, everybody.